The night everything changed. Some nights are so still they feel almost sacred. When the air is warm, the house is quiet, and you can finally sleep knowing everyone you love is under the same roof. That was the night for Arleen and her family. Her son had just come home from active military duty. After months away, the small house was filled with something it hadn't felt in a long time: peace. He dropped his duffel bag in the hallway, hugged his mom twice, laughed with his dad about the old truck still not running right. And that night, they all went to bed tired but content, believing tomorrow would be an ordinary morning. But ordinary never came. Sometime after midnight, Arleen stirred. A faint, strange scent tugged at her from the edge of a dream. Something metallic, something wrong. She nudged her husband. "Do you smell that?" He frowned in the dark. The air felt heavy, the way it does before a summer storm. He got up, thinking maybe a wire had shorted near the kitchen. Arleen followed, half awake, barefoot on cool tile. When they turned the corner, the world was already on fire. Orange light clawed up the wall like it had been waiting for them, swallowing curtains, cabinets, the familiar heart of their home. The sound wasn't a crackle anymore. It was a roar, low and alive. Arleen didn't think, she just ran. Out the door, into the night air that smelled of smoke and rain that never came. Her husband turned back. His son was still sleeping in the far room. He shouted his name, coughed through the smoke, stumbled down the hallway until a shape rose from the bed. Startled, half blind, he grabbed his son's arm and pulled him out into the yard. By then, the fire had already broken through the roof. The first fire truck arrived fast. Neighbors standing in the street, faces lit by flashing red. Relief flickered for a moment, until confusion set in. The crew explained, technically, their department wasn't responsible for this address. They'd put out what they could, they said, but another department would have to finish the job. So they sprayed the visible flames, made sure nothing was spreading, and then they left. Arleen stood there in her nightgown, barefoot on wet grass, watching the truck disappear down the road. The house smoldered. Steam rose from the black skeleton of what used to be her kitchen. Her husband put an arm around her, whispering that it was going to be all right. For a little while, it looked like maybe it would be. Until the glow started again. Somewhere deep inside the wreckage, a spark found air. Then another. Then the fire was back. Stronger, hungrier, and this time no one came. The other department didn't arrive for hours. By dawn, the house was gone. All that remained were the brick steps leading to nothing and the faint outline of where family photographs once hung. The air smelled of melted insulation and wet cedar. Every sound echoed. A hammering bird, the clatter of a loose tin gutter, Arleen's own breath catching in disbelief. It's strange how fast a lifetime can burn. The couch where she'd held her newborn son. The chair where her husband always tied his boots. Even the wedding album on the mantel. Ashes now, its pages floating away one by one. Arleen didn't cry that morning. She just stared, numb, at the smoke drifting through the trees. When people lose everything, tears come later. First comes silence, the kind that hums in your ears and makes you forget to breathe. Friends arrived with coffee. Neighbors brought blankets. Reporters asked for statements. But all Arleen could think about were the things that couldn't be replaced. Her wedding ring, her engagement ring. They'd been on her dresser that night. Little circles of gold she wore every day, tokens of all the years that built this life. Now they were gone, like everything else. Later, she would say that what she remembered most wasn't the fire itself, but the quiet after, the empty space where her home used to be, the way the light looked when the sun came up over ashes. And somewhere in that ruin, beneath the soot and twisted metal, the rings were waiting. When the fire was finally out, it left behind more than ashes. It left silence, no voices, no ticking clock, no smell of coffee, only the quiet breath of smoke rising from what used to be a home. For Arleen, the next few days passed like a dream she couldn't wake from. Insurance adjusters came and went. Friends brought casseroles that she forgot to eat. The local paper printed a short column about the fire. A total loss, they called it. Those words echoed in her mind. Total loss. But some losses can't be measured by the weight of a house. 3 days after the fire, Arleen went back to the property. She brought heavy gloves, a small box, and her son, who refused to let her go alone. The ground still crunched underfoot, brittle with soot and glass. Every step stirred up tiny clouds of black dust that smelled faintly of electricity and sorrow. She didn't know exactly what she was looking for, only that she had to look. She started where the bedroom used to be, tracing invisible outlines on the ground. Here was where the dresser stood. Here was the window where the morning sun used to land across her jewelry box. She crouched, brushed away a layer of ash, and for a long moment found nothing. Just burnt wood and gray dust. Then something caught her eye, a faint shimmer, dull but different from the rest. She reached for it, and the ash gave way to something small and solid. A circle, her wedding band. She froze, breath caught in her throat. It didn't even look like gold anymore. Just a lump of black metal fused with bits of melted glass. But she knew its weight, the shape of it. Her hand closed around it instinctively. Then another glint, a few inches away. The engagement ring, stone blackened, prongs twisted. And then a third, the mother's ring, the one her children had picked out years ago. All of them together, still lying where she'd left them. Arleen sank to her knees. Around her the house was gone, the air full of ghosts and dust. But in her palm there was something that had survived. Barely. The rings were ruined, or so it seemed. The gold was scorched black. The stones, once bright with light and color, were clouded, cracked, lifeless. They looked like things pulled from the bottom of the sea after decades. Her son placed a hand on her shoulder, quiet, unsure what to say. She whispered, "They're gone." But still, she wrapped them in tissue and placed them gently in the box she'd brought. Even when something looks beyond saving, it's hard to let it go. Those rings weren't just metal and stone. They were milestones, promises, births, years of laughter and arguments and small, ordinary miracles. So she kept them. Because keeping them felt like keeping a piece of her life before the fire. A few days later, Arleen was back at the school where she taught, trying to return to routine, even though nothing felt normal. Her coworkers hugged her, offered condolences, asked what she needed. Among them was a familiar face, her colleague, who also happened to be the jeweler's wife. They'd shared classrooms, stories, and years of friendship. When Arleen mentioned that she'd found the rings, her friend asked if she could see them. When she opened the small box and the blackened rings rolled into her hand, there was a long silence. Her friend looked at them closely, then said softly, "You should let my husband take a look. He might be able to help." Arleen laughed under her breath. "Help," she said. "They're cooked solid." Her friend just smiled. "You'd be surprised what he can bring back." Later that week, Arleen walked into the jewelry store. The bell above the door chimed, and she held out the small box like something fragile, something sacred. She explained what had happened. The fire, the first responders, how it rekindled in the night. How they'd lost everything but made it out alive. When she lifted the lid, the jeweler looked down at the rings and didn't say much at first. He just studied them under the light, turning them over, seeing what might still be possible. They looked like something no one could fix. But to a craftsman, there's always a chance. He nodded quietly and said, "It's a long shot, but let's see what we can do." For Arleen, it wasn't about perfection. It was about proof. Proof that something from that night could still be made whole again. When Arleen handed me the little box, it didn't look like jewelry. It looked like loss. 3 misshapen rings, fused with soot and time, their stones black as coal. Most people would have called them beyond repair. But in my line of work, beyond repair isn't a verdict. It's a challenge. I told her it was a long shot. She nodded. "They've already been through the fire," she said. "What's one more chance?" She left them with me, and for a long moment after the door closed, I just stood there, staring down at that box. Under magnification, the truth revealed itself. The gold had been burned past recognition, covered in thick, crusted fire scale, a layer of oxides that forms when metal meets oxygen in extreme heat. The stones, diamonds, and birthstones, were blistered with carbon residue, their settings brittle, prongs collapsed inward. The engagement ring was the worst of it. The center diamond, once bright and sharp, was gone, either shattered in the heat or lost to the rubble. All that remained was an empty crown of melted gold. I ran my finger over the damage. The surface felt rough, almost pitted, like lava cooled in place. But underneath, I could still see it, the faint, stubborn glow of the gold that wanted to come back. Fire takes the surface first, but gold remembers what it was. The first step was the acid bath. I filled a ceramic beaker with a solution jewelers call pickle, a mild acid that eats away oxides and scale without harming the metal beneath. Each ring went in one at a time, lowered slowly, the surface fizzing faintly as the reaction began. The room smelled faintly metallic, like rain on hot pavement. Hours passed. The black skin began to lift. Beneath the soot, hints of yellow started to show through. When I pulled them out, I rinsed each one under clear water and laid them on a clean cloth. They were still scarred, but alive again, in their own way. Next came the polish. There's no machine that can do this work without a human hand. Every pass of the wheel is a conversation between pressure and patience. Push too hard and the gold gives way. Move too soft and the fire scale clings on. Bit by bit, the shine returned. It wasn't perfect yet, but the reflection in that metal was enough to know there was hope. After cleaning came disassembly. Every stone had to come out. The heat had loosened them, and some prongs were nearly gone. I worked under magnification, easing each gem free. They were coated in soot, black, dull, opaque. But stones have a memory too. Once they were removed, I placed them in an ultrasonic cleaner. Sound waves vibrating through a solution to knock away what the fire had left behind. When I lifted them out and dried them under the light, a miracle happened. Color returned. The birthstones began to glimmer again. Tiny sparks of blue, green, red, as if each one was exhaling after being trapped in smoke. Even the smallest light, given time and care, finds its way through the dark. But one stone never came back. The main diamond from her engagement ring, the one her husband had placed on her finger decades ago, was gone. The prongs were melted away, leaving only a ring of charred metal where the gem had once been. I ran my thumb across it and felt the void like a heartbeat. That kind of loss you can't fix with polish or acid. It needs something else, something human. That night I told my wife about it. She already knew Arleen from the school. They'd taught together for years. When I mentioned the missing diamond, she didn't hesitate. "She's been through enough," she said. "Let's replace it, our gift." And that's how it was decided. A new center stone, a lab-grown diamond, brilliant and flawless. Chosen not to erase the past, but to honor it. I rebuilt the settings, reshaped each prong, and seated the stones again one by one. The gold was soft from the heat, temperamental, but patient work restored its strength. When the new diamond went in, it caught the bench light and split it into rainbows. For a moment, the shop felt quiet again, the kind of quiet that comes when a job turns from repair into resurrection. There's a point in every restoration when the work stops being about metal or gems. It becomes about meaning. You stop seeing damage and start seeing survival. By the time I finished polishing the last band, the blackness was gone. In its place was the soft, deep glow that only old gold carries, the kind that's lived a life, been through something, and come out shining anyway. I set them in a small velvet box, the same shape as the one she'd handed me, but this time when I opened it, there was light. They didn't look like they'd been through a fire. They looked like they'd never left her hand. And that's when I realized something. Jewelry doesn't just mark moments. It survives them. It carries what memory can't. Tomorrow, she'll come pick them up. For now, they rest here, gleaming softly under the lamplight. Proof that sometimes, what fire destroys, craftsmanship, and a little faith, can bring back to life. If this video resonates with you, please leave a comment below. Like and subscribe so you never miss what's coming next. Until next time, here's your next video.